guys. Hey, thank you so much for hopping on the call today. It is Austin with Fit Pro Tracker, and we are so excited to have you. It's Wednesday, it's 12 Pacific Standard, and we are so excited to talk to you about Fit Pro Tracker and how it is the greatest and the best gym software growth engine with CRM and billing. And I'm telling you, there's the reason why hundreds of locations are signing up. And I have personally onboarded those hundreds of locations, but I have a special guest. His name is Matt Schneider, and he is incredible. He is a EVP of operations at Fit Pro Tracker. He owns multiple companies, and he's a co-founder of The Project and Squire. And he also has quite a few coaching clients that he helps build their businesses. He's going to be going over the different core values. But again, as you guys know, I talk a little too much. So I'm going to give the floor to Matt. And again, he is a great friend, a brother. We've been in the battlefield together when it comes to business, and he has some knowledge that he is going to be dropping today. But again, Matt, you take it. It's up to you. You take the floor.
Thanks, Austin. Appreciate you, dude. If there's one thing I wish I could replicate over and over again, would just be your energy and tenacity for life, man. But thank you very much. Happy to be here and really share a very important topic that has changed the entire landscape of my life, my family's lives, and through my coaching program and through the different leadership roles I have within the different companies, be able to really shape and elevate the lives of those people that are on my team and their teams and their family members. And so really excited to talk about core values and the importance of having personal core values that we operate off of, that become the true North Star of how we make decisions and who we allow to be in our lives and what capacity and the decisions that we make and the proximity that we are to people and circumstances, food, behaviors, all of that is all based off core values. And to kind of back up to where my origin story as it relates to core values, I became an entrepreneur back in 2013. And, that's a story in and of itself for another day on how that even happened. But the long and short of it is that I was really a high performer within the special operation teams that I was on. I spent 5 years as an entry operator on a SWAT team and a couple of years with the U.S. Marshal's Office Task Force. And I knew special operations really, really well. And when it came to like room clearing and dealing with these, really chaotic, quickly evolving circumstances that required response, my team and I, we really thrived in it. And so I opened a special operations training company in 2013. It was designed to help better elevate the training of law enforcement, military, as well as civilians that wanted to go down that path of either concealed carry or having weapons for self-defense. But it was a really big 30,000 foot square feet inside, another 30,000 feet outside. It looked like a little village in there. It was incredible. We landed our first Navy contract. Pretty early on, within the first 6 months, we had our first naval special warfare group come from the East Coast over to Idaho, where the company was at the time. And the company really rooted in very quickly from the standpoint of the model itself. It was very well received from the civilian side. We had a great foundation for the memberships there. We landed contracts with the Air Force, with the several different federal entities, the IRS, the DEA, U.S. Marshals, the FBI. Like, we had pretty much all the agencies working out of there. So I knew that I had brought something to the market that was really special. The problem was the company itself wasn't thriving. People were really enjoying the atmosphere. They were enjoying the training environment, but from a business standpoint, it was falling on its face. And for the first couple of years, I was just so frustrated. I was frustrated by the fact that I had left my position with the sheriff's office, my position on the SWAT team, and that I was working way more hours than I'd ever worked before for way less money than I'd ever earned before. I was leaving the house and leaving my wife and son, before the sun came up a lot of times. working all through the day into the evening and coming home. And if I was lucky, I'd be catching them as they were starting to wind down for the evening. But it was rare that I was getting to spend any quality time with them. It was rare that I was getting to share meals with them. And it was just a really shitty time because of the fact that I wasn't operating as a husband, a father, an employer, as an entrepreneur, the way that I should have been. I was trying to take too much of the special operations side and what makes that work and apply it to business, and there was a disconnect there. So I actually hired my first business coach in about 2016, 2017 timeframe. And they talked to me amongst a lot of things, but this concept of leadership, which I understood because of the teams I was on, but where leadership really originates from, and the fact that leadership is always the problem and it's always the solution. And we need to learn how to effectively lead ourselves before we can ever learn how to effectively lead other people. And too many times people try to pin on a title or a rank or something that says I'm a leader, right? It's positional leadership, and they think that that's what leadership is, and that's what I was doing. That's actually not at all what leadership is. Leadership is people's voluntarily following you and allowing them to be influenced by you because they want to be. And that's the voluntary piece of it. It's not forced leadership where people are following because they're concerned about the consequences. And so I wasn't effectively leading myself. My relationship with my family was very rocky. My finances were in the toilet. My credit score went from a mid 700s down to, I don't even know how low it got, but it was probably in the 500s because of missed payments and borrowing money or robbing Peter to pay Paul. It was just awful, dude. And so he's talking about leadership. He's talking about the need to learn how to effectively lead yourself first. And where that starts is with core values. And at that point, I didn't have any. I didn't have a true North Star. I was just getting up every day. I was grinding away. I was working my ass off. I was doing what I thought was correct and what I thought needed to be done, but I didn't have a compass to lead myself off of. I wasn't sure when to say yes to things or when to say no to things. I wasn't exercising discipline in the important areas. It's all because I didn't have core values. So as soon as I started to recognize and understand that core values were not just about what is in a business, it's not just business related for the operations of companies, it really is a very personal thing. And I started to think about that, and then I started to develop my own core values. And as soon as I did that, Austin, everything began to change. Everything changed from that standpoint. It wasn't even very long that things started to change. So about 2017, 2018, I started around the corner. We sold the company in 2019. I was able to get it to a point to where we had buyers for it, struck a deal, and was able to then move on to the next chapter. And I just went down this path of being very intentional about my personal and professional development and using my core values to be my North Star as to the things I would say yes to and the things I would say no to. So everybody's version of what success looks like and what they want is different. And so everybody's core values are different. But at the end of the day, we all need to have a very high standard of expectations of ourselves and of other people if we're really going to achieve a high level of success. And so I started looking at what other people's core values were and how they were operating and what their true north was, and started comparing that to what my definition of success was, and what did it look like in the three primary areas that I focus on, which is my health, my wealth, and my relationships. And so here are the four that I came up with. The first one is to have a very high give a shit factor. And what that means is that in all things that we do, we're an artist. In all things that we go to accomplish, we attack it with the knowledge and understanding that we are always in control of our circumstances. We always maintain that power and control of our circumstances, and that there's a right way and a wrong way to do anything. And it's very obvious, right? If you go into a business, if you go into a home, if you look into somebody's car in the parking lot, it's very evident as to whether or not they have any kind of give a shit factor, if what you're seeing is absolute mess or just this absolute cleanliness and attention to detail, right? So having a high give a shit factor means that you play to win, and you actually aren't out there playing to lose. Like you're playing to win, and caring about every detail along the way. So that's my first core value. My second core value.
And real quick, so Matt, with that, what would you say with somebody that, I mean, they have it, they're grinding, and then suddenly they hit the wall. Something happens, whether it's personally or financially or business, and they're down. I mean, they are down and out, and they have that, but at the same time, it's just, they're down. What would you say to that? Like, what would be your encouragement or advice for those people?
So that actually is one of my 4 core values, actually, which is to be emotionally and physically disciplined. So life is hard. Like life is not meant to be easy. The Greeks thousands of years ago, they determined that on the other side of suffering is passion, right? And that it's through suffering that you find passion. And so, life hands us all kinds of cards that aren't optimal, right? And sometimes it's a minor setback, other times it's a sudden tragedy. And it's just, in life we have these peaks and valleys, and we have our ups and downs, and being emotionally disciplined is very important, because when we get knocked down, we need to have the kind of resiliency and the kind of discipline to respond versus react, right? We need to have the kind of discipline to recognize that a temporary setback isn't a ultimate failure. The kind of discipline to understand that there are lessons that can be learned and extracted from these failures and from these circumstances to make us better if we want to actually go through the process of extracting them. When I was struggling as an entrepreneur, my business was not thriving, and I knew that it wasn't the business model. I had to come face to face with the guy in the mirror to understand that leadership is truly the problem and it is truly the solution. That was tough, and so when we find ourselves, down and out, we never make permanent decisions based off of temporary circumstances, right? And we take the approach of, we always maintain the power and control to change our circumstances. So let's change our circumstances. Let's do the work. What a lot of people lack is discipline. When I say to be emotionally and physically disciplined, discipline is the bridge between what we have and what we want. And too many times people, they may have short bursts of discipline. And so they're disciplined for a week when they want to lose weight. They're disciplined for a week when they want to change one behavior, they want to develop a new habit, but they don't do it consistently over time, which is what it takes to actually see and experience change. So, to answer your question, one of my core values is to be emotionally and physically disciplined. And it's to understand that when life hands us lemons, we make lemonade out of it, right? It's our perspective on how we look at things. We can be looking at things as, why me? And, how come this and how come that? And I was dealt a bad hand, and we can operate off of that, but we're not going to be doing ourselves any favors, right? So that's how I handle it. I look inward and ask myself whether or not there are lessons to be learned. In almost all cases, there are. Now, when there's times where there's sudden tragedy that is completely outside of our control, having a good network and proximity to others is going to be really important as well. And so that's how I handle that, is through the emotional and physical discipline part. My third core value is to burn the boats. And if you look back at the origin of burning the boats, back in the early 1700s, essentially what that means is that you leave nothing on the table. It's either victory or death. If you look at where it came from, and these these soldiers that were literally lighting the boats on fire as they got into the rowboats and started rowing to shore to go, storm a beach and start to launch an attack on an opposition that far outnumbered them, and all things considered, looked like things were in their favor. There was some major messages that were being sent by the leadership that instructed the soldiers to burn the boats. And the first thing was that failure was not an option. It was either victory or death, and that they needed to fight like their life depended on it, because their life did depend on it. And these soldiers, when they lit the boats on fire, they knew that if they were going to get back to their families, if they were going to see their families again, A, they needed to win the battle, and B, they were going to be leaving in their opposition's boats, right? And so there was no other option. And so the other thing that was being taught and shared was the fact that the leadership was going to be right there with them. The leadership was going to be in the trenches with them, fighting the fight with them, and there was no retreating for them either. So there was a very strong message being sent, and wouldn't you know it, that they won the battles. And it's amazing what happens when we purposely will put our back against the wall, and we will treat things as if it's victory or death, and we will approach things without having a backup plan. Too many times people go into circumstances with a backup plan, and it's really an off-ramp to their goals. It's an off-ramp to the things they said they wanted, and so they don't actually ultimately see through what they started because they gave themselves a backup plan. Burning the boats means there is no other option. You attack it as if it's victory or death. And if you do that in your life, if you do that in your health, in your wealth, in your relationships, incredible things happen when you treat things that seriously and refuse to accept failure. The failure is not an option. So that's my third one. First one is have a high give a shit factor. Second one is be emotionally and physically resilient and disciplined. And then the third one is to burn the boats. And the last one is integrity in everything. So that really just kind of speaks for itself. But to take it, a step further beyond the obvious is integrity happens internally and externally. Internally, it's a matter of we never make commitments to ourselves that we either cannot, and we know we cannot follow through with, or we're unwilling to follow through with. One of the areas that I see people set themselves for failure is they make commitments to themselves that they don't truly plan on keeping, or they don't have the ability to keep. And then when they break those promises to themselves, there's an integrity violation. And then there's this imposter syndrome that starts to develop. And then there's this starting to live behind a mask that begins to happen. And it's a really tragic thing when that takes place. And so, internally, keeping integrity with ourselves means that we do not make promises to ourselves that we do not or cannot complete and see through. Same is true on the external. We don't make promises or commitments to other people that we don't intend or cannot see through as well. And breaking our integrity with other people is a surefire way for them to not see us as being serious and not treating us as being serious and treating us as being an amateur and not seeing us as being trustworthy, right? So in everything that we do, in any commitments that we make to ourselves or to others, we always honor those commitments and see them through. We never say we're going to do something that we don't do. We never make promises that we can't keep. And so those are my four core values. I'll stop there in case you or anyone else has questions.
Yeah, real quick. And so with those core values, I know kind of to backtrack, you were saying, hey, I had this company that we built up, I ended up selling. When in that process, was it afterwards, did you go, I need to develop these core values? Was it after you selling the company? Was it when you hit your lowest of low? Like, what was that? And how did you come up with these four core values?
Yeah, so I came up with them as soon as I hired my first coach, my first personal professional development coach. Before hiring a coach, my understanding of what professional development looked like was like a Tony Robbins conference. I didn't, back in 2014, 2015, I didn't understand that personal and professional development happened more intimately. It surely can happen at a conference for sure. But when it comes to like, here are my problems, here are my issues, here are my opportunities, working on a one-on-one coach is what changed the game for me, because they were the ones that were able to look into my eyes and say, Matt, you are the problem. Like, you are the leader of your company, and you have a company that has tremendous potential, but your company's not seeing its potential. It's not being realized because as the leader, you're operating without core values, and your leadership is all based off of core values. Your ability to lead yourself and lead other people is based off of core values. So it started with that conversation, and then me just trusting the process and trusting that what they were saying was true, and starting to work with it. Now, my core values have changed over the years because the level of success that I have today is much different back then. That my pain points of today are not my pain points of, several years ago in that 2016, 2017 timeframe. And so it's been an evolution, and it's a very healthy thing that we challenge our core values from time to time to ensure that they still stand the test of time and they're still true. So the core values I have today are not the same as what they were back then, because I am not the same person. One of the most tragic things I think can happen to somebody is that they are in the same place today as they were a year ago, right? So I don't expect my core values to necessarily even be the same as time goes on, as I continue to evolve and I continue to develop and have more experiences and more wins and more losses, and I'll continue to challenge these core values. And as long as they stand the test of time for where I'm at and where I want to be, then they'll be what they are, irregardless or regardless, however you like to say it. I will always have core values because I've lived a life and seen the lack of results in my health, my wealth, my relationships by not having a North Star, by not having personal core values that determined the proximity I would have to people and circumstances, and not having a North Star to guide me into when to say yes to things and no to things, both personally and professionally. So it's an evolution, but that's where they all started, is back then with my coach, who told me, you can't properly lead yourself without having a true north. Like you will, if you're aiming at nothing, you will hit it every time. And I was hitting it every time because I had nothing that I was operating off of.
That's great. Great advice. Anybody else want to ask any questions?
All set.
Awesome. Awesome. Anything else, Matt, that you wanted to go over in regards? Because I do have a couple more questions.
Fire away with those and let's see where it takes us.
Okay. So your core values, you have 4 core values. How would you go about setting your core values as someone that's new at this? So let's say they're just a brand new entrepreneur, whether they're getting into the business, whether they're young, whether they're a little bit older. What would be your advice on setting these core values? Like you said, yours have changed. Mm-hmm. Where's a good starting point for those people that are wanting to set their core values?
So core values are not just words. They're not just something that you write down or, put on a vision board or hang up on a mirror. Like these are non-negotiable. So when it comes to where you start, it's making a commitment to actually live with non-negotiables and operate off of non-negotiables. It's making a commitment. And again, we don't make commitments that we are unwilling or unable to keep. So it's making a commitment that we're not going to be approval seeking and validation seeking, because having core values means that you inherently become polarizing, and you have to be okay with that. Like, when you're operating off of core values and you have a true north, and you are starting to edit relationships of people and circumstances that don't rise to the occasion and don't have the same level of standards of expectations of themselves, those relationships start to get edited. In some cases, they may get deleted altogether. You have to be okay with being polarizing. You have to be okay with pushing away the things that don't represent your future and represent what you want out of this short life, and attracting in its place other people and circumstances that will facilitate that growth and that development. And so it starts there. It starts with knowing that you are willing to commit to these as non-negotiables, and that you're willing to set a true north, that you're willing to be polarizing, and that this is a lifestyle. You're also willing to understand and accept the fact that there are consequences for not following these things. Once you get to that point, then it is future forecasting as to where do you want to be. Like if you were to set a 3-year vision where do you want yourself and your family and your loved ones to be 3 years from now? What does that vision look like? And then it's to back it up to 1-year goals. So your 3-year vision, you never actually achieve. That's always being pushed out 3 years, which is what's always keep you hungry and progressing forward. So your 3-year vision always is a 3-year vision where it's always developing and evolving and hopefully getting bigger and better and more exciting as time goes on. But the 1-year goal becomes like the things you will accomplish. So what do I want to accomplish in 1 year? What in the 3 categories that I mentioned that are important to me? It's my health, it's my wealth, and it's my relationship. So what are my goals in those 3 categories 1 year from now? And then reverse engineering it from there. And I teach this in my coaching, by the way. It follows the EOS model, from the book Traction that Gino Wickman wrote. EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So this is that same model where you then break it up into quarterly goals and then monthly projects and things that are getting done that boil down to weekly to-dos. Once you gain that kind of clarity and you have absolute clarity as to what you will accomplish 1 year from now with the acceptance of core values that are going to take you there, then you find a quiet spot with no distractions. You put your phone away, you put everything digital away, you go to a place where you can just clear your head, whether it's the beach or the mountains or wherever that special spot is. And you just think about what are the 3 to 5 characteristics that you are committed to encompassing, that you are willing to talk through your actions moving forward on, and what do those characteristics look like, and then just putting adjectives to them and just making them a thing. But they have to be specific. They have to be something that can be defined and that you can easily grade yourself and your progression to, and you can say this is the stop points of where I'm at based on core values. So 3 to 5 of those things, and you step back and you really think about it. And then once you have it, then you say, okay, now the work begins. Now is where I start to really take a look at the different areas of my life and how do those areas compare, and how do the people and the habits and the circumstances compare to these core values. And that's where you start getting closer and moving away from certain people and certain things based on these core values, and then they move from there. So that's in a nutshell how you get started.
And you said that you have quite a few companies that you coach, quite a few actually. Have you been able to see that success turnaround once you're able to establish those core values into those companies?
Yeah, there's just some universal truths out there, and there's so many things that are common sense or just not common knowledge. And having personal core values is one of those things, right? It doesn't take a ton of deep explanation and scientific data for it to make sense that core values, having personal core values that set high standards of expectations for yourself and others, that are non-negotiable, like it just makes sense. So for my coaching clients, it's common sense, a lot of times not common knowledge. So that's one of the initial challenges is to develop those, and for them to be able to recite them, and for them to be able to live them out, and for other people to see those in action. But absolutely, that is an essential thing. In the early stages, when a client, they come to me and they express interest in applying for the program, if they are unwilling to develop their own core values and start living by those as non-negotiables, then we're not going to be a good fit for each other. Because I have very high standards of expectations of myself and those that I put myself in close proximity to, and that includes on a professional basis with the team I'm on, with the different companies I'm with, and with the coaching clients I interact with on a regular basis. So it doesn't take a lot of convincing. It just takes trusting the process. They just have to trust the process enough to get it done and do the steps that I outlined a moment ago. and then the outcomes start to speak for themselves. And if there's one, thing that's true is you can never argue with results and outcomes, right? They just are what they are. So when they start experiencing the outcomes and the results of having these, then they're like where I was in 2016, 2017, where it's like, holy shit, how did I not have these before? How did I live this way? And what I would have given to have had somebody come to me earlier on in my journey and have the same conversation with me, so I wouldn't have made so many mistakes and been the reason why I was the source of so much pain for myself and my family on both the personal and professional, areas.
It's great stuff. And I will tell you, since working with you, those core values are evident, and you can speak, and it's pretty incredible to see, Matt, what you talk and what you're talking about, especially right now, you live it out. And because I've dealt with gyms and studios, and they don't have core values, and when they go to open their doors, or when they're trying to start their business, and it's like they're just lost. They're lost, and they don't know where they're going, and it's up and it's down. It's a roller coaster. No, I really do appreciate it, Matt. Is any other questions from anybody else? Awesome. Matt, do you have any closing lines? Anything that you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
Just that, being an entrepreneur isn't easy. Being an entrepreneur is one of the most challenging personal and professional development programs on earth. And, whether you're a gym owner, or you're a doctor, or you're an artist, or anything else, we must have something that we are operating off of, that are non-negotiables, that set us up for success. And we always maintain the power and control to change our circumstances. And core values is how you'll get there. And if you just trust that fact and are willing to go through the exercise of developing them, and then go through the process of living them, every person who does it will see the impact of it. The thing that I will say, though, Austin, is that these are not just words. These are not, this is not a topic to where somebody can say, yeah, I've got core values. And you say, okay, what do they are and what do they mean? They can't recite them, and they don't really know, right? Because then you don't have core values. If you cannot recite them and you can't define them, you do not have core values. And certainly if other people were to be given feedback, or to give feedback on how you live your life, if you are living incongruent with what your core values are, then your core values are non-negotiable. They are negotiable, I should say. And so that also isn't going to change your circumstances. So this is a really important thing. And whether you're an entrepreneur, you're a husband, you're a wife, you're a friend, you will level up and you will improve in really important and amazing ways by just starting here, learning how to lead yourself first through core values, not trying to lead other people because of title or rank or position, without having core values, and trying to lead others before you learn how to lead yourself. Start with yourself first. Know that leadership is always the problem, is always the solution, and core values is the root of learning how to lead yourself first, and then being able to start having a bigger impact on the world, a larger footprint, and this legacy that we're creating to be more profound, and really be able to improve in whatever the areas that you deem to be important in this very short burst of life that we have here.
Unbelievable, mind-blowing. I love it, Matt. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time, kind of just dropping some serious knowledge to help different business owners, gym owners, studio owners. Now, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
The best thing is I'm active on social media. That's probably the best thing. If they went to Matt Schneider _official, they can find me there. The DM thing is strong in that regard. If they're curious about the coaching, that's ignitionyearcoaching.com. And then of course, on the FitPro Tracker side, It's not necessarily finding me personally on the FitPro Tracker side, but if they want to find the best, most robust, all-in-one fitness software, they would go to fitprotracker.com.
Love it. Love it. Matt, well, again, like I said, thank you for just taking the time. Thank you for everyone that's on. If you get a chance, write your name and what location you're at in the chat. But in the meantime, guys, we do this every single first Wednesday of the month, and we are so excited for next month. I'll be sending out an email on who it's going to be. But Matt, thank you for your knowledge. And again, guys, if you have any questions about FitPro Tracker, we are here for you. It's an all-in-one system that is the absolute best gym growth engine out there. I'm telling you, it does it all. So we greatly appreciate you, Matt. Everyone that's on the call or watching the recording, thank you for taking the time. And we can't wait for next month. Have a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. Talk to you later, guys. Bye.
Thanks, guys.